Join me in welcoming dance maestro Kala Kirti Dr. Ravibandhu Vidyapathy as he takes us on a fascinating journey into the visionary costume design of his father Kala Suri Somabandhu Vidyapathy. Discover how a single act of design legitimized women's participation in the Kandyan dance tradition, reshaping gender roles and paving the way for modern female dancers in Sri Lanka. Featuring rare archival imagery, personal reflections, and concluding with a powerful live percussions and dance performance, this session celebrates creativity, culture, and empowerment. Over to you, Dr. Lanka.
Thank you. As the topic goes, it's how one costume empowered women to dance. You might wonder why a half-naked man has appeared against this topic of empowerment of women. However, it is connected, and you will see how and why. I'm going to talk a little about the history of women dancing in Sri Lanka. The history of women dance. From the Anuradhapura period, we find evidence of a strong tradition of women dancing, especially the bas-relief sculptures from Anuradhapura, Polonnaruwa, Yapahuwa, Gadaladeniya, and the Kandyan period frescoes bear testimony for this fact. Slide 3. This is from Gadaladeniya. The female dancer was held in high esteem and was closely associated with the royalty. Evidence from the Mahavansa and other literal sources. 1. King Dutugamunu was accompanied, according to the Mahavansa writings, by 16,000 dancers in the ceremonies worshipping the Mahasaya, or the Great Stupa. 2. When a king died, removing of the crown from the royal body before the funeral rites was performed by the main court dancer, the Raja Nartaki. That was entrusted to the dancer. Evidence 3. Queen Rupavati of Polonnaruwa, queen of King Parakrama Bahu I, was a dancer, and the king built a special arena or a mandapa for her performances. Thus, the female dancer was a respectable character. But after the colonization, especially in the British period, as the arts such as dancing, martial arts were subdued by the British for various socio-political reasons, the female dance art was submerged. Dancing for women was a taboo. Even the girls of traditional dance families were hardly given a chance to learn the art that they inherited. So by the latter part of the 19th century, the female dancing was almost disappeared in Sri Lanka. It was in the mid-20th century that a female dancing tradition was revived, or the female dancing was revived as a thin stream by some upper-class females. There was Miriam Peiris, daughter of Sir Paul E. Peiris, the great historian. And then came Chandralekha Pereira, wife of the painter, artist, the man who initiated, started the Haywood College of Fine Arts Mr. J.D.A. Pereira. And then we have Vajira Chitrasena, wife of Guru Chitrasena. So this phenomenon occurred as part of the revival of local culture against highly westernized cultural changes of this period. Now, out of these three bold women, I would like to focus on Vajira Chitrasena. Vajira is considered as Sri Lanka's first professional female dancer with essentially a Kandyan dance training. Initiated by Chitrasena in the mid-1940s, Vajira burgeoned or flourished as the most refined and versatile female dancer, Kandyan female dancer, or female Kandyan dancer of the 20th century. Her multifaceted career as a dancer, choreographer, creator, and visionary par excellence remains unsurpassed to this date. The dance of Sri Lanka, in its journey from the past to the present, arrived at a significant milestone in the mid-20th century. That is the emanation of the modern dance of Sri Lanka, or the emergence of the Sri Lankan dance theatre or concert dance. The arrival of Rabindranath Tagore in 1934, followed by Uday Shankar in 1935, had a lasting impact on the emergence of this modern movement. Chitrasena, Prema Kumara, Vasanta Kumara, Shesha Palihakkara, Nimal Velgama, Ganganatha. They were some of the pioneers who shouldered this process of creating a modern dance theatre in Sri Lanka. I opine to say that Chitrasena became eminent in this sphere of modern dance or dance theatre for his refined work with highly artistic and intellectual approach. The early works of these leading artists came with new forms in our dance, and these new dance forms demanded sophisticated costume designs. This need was fulfilled by Ravibandhu Vidyapathy. Ravibandhu hails from a family of temple painters and ritual dancers. He studied painting and sculpture at Shantiniketan, Tagore's abode for the arts, and later at Travancore University in Kerala. Ravibandhu, as he was coming from a traditional family of dancers, studied dance for a while under Chitrasena. He was one of the 5 first students of Chitrasena, but later he quit dance to take up painting, which he also inherited from his family. Let's now take a look at some of Ravibandhu's paintings, easel paintings. This painting of Judas from the Bible inspired me to create my own choreography, a dance piece called Judas. These are Somabandhu's mural paintings from the Belangila temple. Note the details of the ornaments, the costumes, and also the very dramatic and balletic quality of his paintings. Can we move on to slide 12, please? Yeah. Next slide. This is the first Kandyan female costume designed by Somabandhu for Vajira in the year 1948. Until this costume was created by Somabandhu, there was no proper costume or attire for the female dancers in Sri Lanka. Next. Further developments of the same costume that Somabandhu brought forth. Back to the previous please. The traditional Kandyan dance costume of the males consisted of white and red drapery and silver ornaments. Somabandhu borrowed elements from the male costume and created a female costume, first for Vajira, using the same traditional colors, white, red, silver and gold. And in the later developments, he introduced various colors so that this was mainly for stage purposes, so that on stage the costumes would appear more interesting and also react well with the stage lights. So these developments were brought in the 1950s, 60s, 70s and the 90s respectively. Other versions of traditional female Kandyan costumes created for Vajira and Rubeka. On the request of Vajira, Somabandhu designed costumes that revealed the beauty of the exposed human body, which marked the extended lines of the female dancer. These designs or costumes not only added a touch of brilliance to the dancer but also eased the movements. Next. As I said, this is how Somabandhu borrowed elements from the traditional sources to create the ornaments and the headgear mainly. You can see the traditional West headdress of the West dancer. The topmost part is called Pahimpata, and the semicircular form is the ornament is called Sikhamandana or the Vestattua, and the two-ear ornaments are called Todumatta. And in the middle of this Sikhamandana there is this form, of course very Kandyan. If you look at the Kandyan doorways, you can see that form at Nalala Maligaon or any other Kandyan period architecture. So these elements were brought in together to design a subtler, smaller and appealing to a female body ornaments. Sources, the design and the finished work. Can we go to the next slides, please? And how other parts were also taken to produce the female costume. It's actually strongly influenced by the entire costume of the West dancer. According to the legends, the West dancer's attire is a regalia, the regalia of the kings Malaya, the three kings who came down from India to cure King Panduvasdev, who was affected by Kuveni's curse as she was abandoned and betrayed by Vajira. So the curse affected the successor, Panduvasdev. And there was a need to perform a grand ritual for which the three kings, the brothers, were invited here to perform the ritual. And on their return, they wanted the art of ritual or this ritual or the entire Kumbhakarya. It was not called Kumbhakarya then, simply a ritual to continue, so that the three kings found a young princess from a highborn young man, taught him the art of the ritual and gave him part of their costume. Instead of the 64 parts of the royal regalia, they gave him 32 and entrusted the job of continuing that ritual in Sri Lanka. And the prince whom they selected from a village was deified by them. Usually somebody is deified after death, but here in this case, this young prince was deified by these kings while he was still alive, and they entrusted the task of continuing the ritual in Sri Lanka after they left. So that's the actor of the West dancer. So the costume on the one hand is an outfit of a king, and on the other hand is an outfit of a god. Hence it is considered sacred. Even today, as is the custom, all these traditional dancers, they know or they practice it before placing this headgear on stage, which is on our heads. We do worship it. We do touch it with great respect, because for us it is sacred. So, to fulfill the needs of the modern stage dance of the 20th century, Ravibandhu borrowed all these parts and created a refined female, a complete female dance costume. You can see how all these parts were taken and they were made smaller to fit a female figure, and the shapes were changed here and there. As I said before this costume was created by Somabandhu, or the first costume for Vajira was created by Somabandhu, the female dancers wore the men's costume. Can we kindly go to slide number slide number 3, yes, of see, they were compelled to wear the men's costume because there was no suitable costume for women. So over a jacket, they wore the owl harrier and the entire costume of a male dancer. This is a picture taken in the 1960s after Somabandhu created the female costume, and Guru Vajira is wearing that complete costume of a female dancer with a simplified headgear. Yeah, now we can go back to slide 17. Oh,
no idea. That is allocated.
Here are some of the other designs that Somabandhu came out with for other styles of dance in Sri Lanka, the Savaragamo and the Low Country. This is a set of Low Country dance costumes called for a dance called Giri Devi. The first design, Giri Devi, the name indicates that it's a female character. Giri Devi is actually the consort. Giri Devi is the consort of demon Gara from our traditional indigenous mythology. Demon Gara is the term demon at once may mean something ferocious, something dangerous, but in Asian mythology the term demon is used for mythological characters, some of whom had mixed qualities. Some were good and some were bad. And the demon Gara had a special task in our history. That is to act or to cleanse the spaces that were dirty by any kind of activity, or physically dirty or psychologically, mentally unwell. So the main task of this god or demigod or demon Gara was to cleanse the mind as well as physical spaces. Giri Devi is the consort of this demon Gara. So the speciality here is that you can see that these all three appear to be feminine. Yet the first design was done for a male dancer, the man who created the dance and performed it by the name of K.S. Fernando, a great traditional dancer who created this dance in the 1960s, which later became one of the most popular traditional dances in our repertoire of the low country dance. So that was the first costume designed for the male dancer who personified a female character. And then later on, when women took the same role and performed, these are the versions of costumes that Somabandhu designed for the female dancers, and that is one of the stage images of this costume in a different color. Well, the Savargamo dance is the dance form that is found in the central lowlands of Sri Lanka, around Ratnapura area. According to some researchers, this dance form is the oldest form of dance found in Sri Lanka. However, this is Somabandhu's costume for stage versions of the traditional Savargamo ritual dances. Other folk dances the one on the extreme left, the female figure with a sickle. Today there is this very popular folk dance called Goyam Kapimenatu. Though it appears to be a traditional folk dance, it is traditional because it is based on traditional dance forms and techniques and styles. But this is also a dance that was created in the year 1950 and adapted as one of the traditional folk dances into our repertoire. And is one of the popular dances of today. And it was created by Guru Mani Bharata, yet another great dancer, choreographer, visionary and teacher of the 20th century Sri Lankan dance. The dance with the tambourine or the mantero. This is also a dance that was confined to men, but for the stage it was adapted or given over to female dancers. So note the use of these colors, mostly earth colors. The browns, the ochres, creams, golds, reds. Next. Here comes a special phase. Oriental ballet and modern dance. Now the term Oriental ballet came into being in the 1940s itself, when the early mentioned pioneers like Chitrasena, Pani Bharata, Prema Kumara, Vasanta Kumara started with a form of dance that unfolded or narrated stories in dance. So this was the first attempt in Sri Lanka in the early 40s, inspired by the work and the visions of Tagore and also the Bengali school of thought in the arts. Tagore created his own form of dance drama which became an inspiration for artists later, dancers like Uday Shankar, who had the opportunity of working with great Western ballerinas like Anna Pavlova of Russia. So there was a perfect blend, yet with a firm footing on Asian, Indian culture in the works that were created by Tagore and Uday Shankar. With their studies in India, our pioneering modern dancers like Chitrasena were inspired by that form of dance theatre which told stories in dance. And on their return after their studies, they started experimenting with that form of dance to tell stories in dance. And as I said before, I would say Chitrasena excelled in this art of ballet, dance drama, or dance works that told stories in dance. And this particular form was called not just ballet, because that would have created a different connotation, because ballet was then the kind of, I would say, the leading or dominating form of dance in the West. So our works that had certain elements or inspirations from ballet were called Oriental ballets. Even Martha Graham, the great American modern dancer, whose work actually emanated from a stream that was done against classical ballet in the early 20th century, later started calling her dance dramas or works of that nature that told stories in dance, ballets. So the term ballet has become a common term in the world to indicate, to identify those dance works or dance theatre works that tell stories in dance. And the Sri Lankan dance, the Sri Lankan dance dramas were thus called Oriental ballets. Not only Sri Lanka, but India also used the same term. Back to this, the same, yes, no, for the first one, yeah. So we have a design done by Somabandhu for Chitrasena's ballet Nala Damayanti. And Somabandhu was also, as a designer, keen to show the beauty of the human body. Hence, he always had his costumes exposing to some extent the lines of the human body. You can see how the same costume appeared on stage. This is Vajira again. Next. These are designed for ballet Shivaranga by Chitrasena and Vajira in 1985, in which we also performed lead roles, Upeka, myself, Chamal Jayawardena, and touching the classical sources for creating new costumes for dance theatre. The famous South Indian bronze of Parvati Somabandhu seems to have directly inspired and influenced by that costume to create the character of Parvati or Sati in ballet Shivaranga, and this is how the finished costume appeared on stage or in a photograph. Characters from other productions. This has some speciality. This is a work that I choreographed based on the story of Oedipus by Sophocles. So the main characters, the soothsayer, Tiresias, Oedipus, Shakusta, and the quarter ballet. Here, the attempt of Somabandhu is to create costumes that gives the impression of Greek attires, yet he created his own form of Oriental look or Oriental appearance. If you are familiar with the work of Martha Graham, this may perhaps give you a hint of, Graham's costumes with these long gowns and very simple, no ornaments, focusing mainly on the movements and expressions of the characters. Yeah, now completion of a cycle. These are the present day costumes inspired by Somabandhu's designs. Next. You can see how Somabandhu's designs have inspired other costume creators. Of course, some in the folk traditions, and how these costumes and their grammar or that style or colors and forms have gone back into the traditional spaces. The Perahara space, can we go back to the previous please? Or the traditional dance space of the Kaleli Mangalyas or the graduation performances of traditional female dances. So the multiple sources that inspired Somabandhu to create new genres and styles of costumes covered a vast range of artistic expressions of the Orient and Occident. The traditional Sri Lankan ritual forms, folk theatre and their visual aspects, the richness of South Indian art, sculpture and dance forms such as Kathakali, and the designs of the traditional theatre of Southeast Asia and the Far East provided him with a gamut of resources on the one hand. And on the other hand, his profound knowledge of and exposure to the Western art and the 20th century ballet and modern dance broadened the vistas of his creative imagination. Somabandhu was inspired by traditional dance costumes of the ritual space to create modern stage costumes in the 1940s. By the 1990s, his entire artistic exercise has completed a cycle. Designers of today directly follow his style and grammar to create costumes for the present day traditional dance spaces such as Kaleli, Mangalaya and Perahara. I would like to stress or emphasize on the word grammar here because these designs have a particular grammar. because a costume always tells something, it narrates something, it speaks to the audience. So it has a grammar, and the grammar that was introduced by Somabandhu in the traditional dance costumes is being followed to date by almost all designers of Sri Lanka. Next. This is actually the continuation of Somabandhu's legacy and what I do with the style and grammar that he introduced. The pictures speak for themselves. A traditional Kandyan dance costume and a folk dance costume. Next. Two characters from ballets. The first one is actually Eve. This is the design that I created for my first choreographic work based on the first story of the Bible, and that is Eve, which was played by my wife in the year 1983, and this is the character creating from our history. Next. My own ballet of Macbeth. When I created the costume, my study was focused on the traditional dance, low country dance costumes, the design and how it appeared on stage. Next. A designer always draws the character, not the costume. Next. Today in Sri Lanka, you find a strong stream of contemporary and modern dance. Some inspired directly by German or American modern dance, others based on or as a blend of Asian and Western dance forms. So to conclude, I would like to say that Somabandhu's creations of costumes for our traditional dance forms indeed empowered the female dancer of the 20th century. As I said earlier, the female dancing tradition declined by the end of the 19th century, and it was revived by some very bold upper class female dancers whom we talked about earlier. And the need for a costume that depicted the tradition on the one hand and fulfilled the need of the dance theatre or the stage on the other hand was what Somabandhu created and gifted to Sri Lanka. So today, even in the traditional space, the traditional dance graduations, which were originally done only for male dancers with the best costume that was shown before, the females are kind of entitled now to have their traditional dance graduations called the Kale Eli Mangalya or the Paipat Mangalya, or the Shirshabarana Mangalya. Several terms are there to call it. On par with men. Today they have a traditional classical costume to stand alongside the male dancer. So that was Somabandhu's contribution to the dance art of Sri Lanka, and I would say that this contribution of Somabandhu, or the art of Somabandhu, or the designs of Somabandhu, which Vajira Chitrasena pioneered, donning them became the stronghold of the female dancing of Sri Lanka. Thank you. And yes, if you have any questions, it's time now. Before we, of course, lull you with some drumming. Pull the drum down. So the silence indicates that there are no questions. Enjoy the rhythms of Sri Lanka. Kita